welcome everyone to this edition of 7-Minute Takes. This is your host, Jason Stewart. Hope your new year is off to a good start, and we appreciate you joining us for our winter TV wrap-up show. As you may have recalled, on the New Year's Eve edition of the show, we did our wrap-up for mostly for the events concerning movie news in 2015, and we projected a little forward for movie news in 2016. Now we'd like to kind of do the same process for our television brethren. Specifically, we want to talk about our interest shows, especially those who have been nice enough to follow Age of the Nerds coverage of such things as Ash vs. Evil Dead and Walking Dead. Ash vs. Evil Dead had its season finale. Walking Dead had its winter finale. It will return in the spring season with the half season of episodes. And so we also want to talk this edition about the season finale of American Horror Story Hotel, and also talk about some of the upcoming Ducks on the Pond for 2016 shows coming, such as the Damien revival, the bow of the Fox show Lucifer, which we've already had some discussion of. If long-time listeners will recall our discussion of that from San Diego Comic-Con, and the just newly announced as of tonight, the 22nd, news that Fox is developing a TV version of the great William Friedkin, Peter Blatty story, The Exorcist, the award-winning tale, of course, starring everyone's favorite head spinner, Linda Blair. We're going to get into all these things and why Hollywood seems obsessed with demonic possession movies. But first, for our winter wrap-up, we want to talk up first about Ash vs. Evil Dead, which finished its first season on Starz about 3.5 weeks ago. Actually, maybe right around January 1st. Those of you who were nice enough to watch our, pay attention to our episode guide coverage, we appreciate. And just some summation thoughts. I would say the series was a very solid B+ in its first season. I think it did some things very well. I think especially the pilot episode and the episodes that were scripted directly by Sam Raimi were extremely well done. I think the show kept its momentum. I think Bruce Campbell, of course, showed again why he is one of the most beloved genre performers of his generation. He really pulled through with the verbal and the physical humor for Ash. I think we also got to see Ash develop a little bit. The whole Jacksonville element kind of fit hand in glove with what we've seen with the character. In fact, I think the concluding episode, for those who are familiar with the show and did watch the whole series, the concluding episode of the show, I think, was so Ash that it was almost perfect. As you may recall, Ash, when confronted with the opportunity to take the deal of getting his dream life in Florida versus continuing to battle the author of the Necronomicon, the Lucy Lawless character who identified herself as Ruby Noby, but was later exposed to being the immortal author of the Necronomicon, and the figure who had unleashed its evil upon the world, in exchange for leaving Lawless's character to gain or regain her mastery over the evil forces of the world. Ash got his dream life in, in Jacksonville, Florida. And, of course, the show ends with Ash taking the deal, taking along Ray Santiago's Pablo and Dana De Lorenzo's Kelly with him, and basically abandoning the rest of the world to its fate. I think it was a clever cliffhanger for season 1. I thought the show saved its depiction of Lucy Lawless. I was really worried about halfway through when her character kind of seemed to be kind of a generic throwback to the original Evil Dead movies, but it turns out that she's going to be a much more pivotal character than that she's going to continue on to be a character in season 2, and probably a very important one. On the negative side, I did unfortunately find that the way that they ended the arc with Detective Fisher, Jill Marie Jones' character, was I thought, a little rushed and abrupt. The idea of her and Ash developing a relationship, I thought, had some interesting aspects to it. But then to kind of kill her off and have her become your generic Deadite whom Ash has to chop off and kill, I thought was kind of a waste of what could have been, I think, a more intriguing storyline. But overall, the show, especially the episodes directly written by Sam Raimi, of course the pilot was directed by him. You had a lot of really excellent folks followed in his footsteps. Michael J. Bassett and David Frazee stand out as guys who did really good work in the director's chair for this season. Again, the Raimi brothers, their sensibilities showed through, them working and kind of being the overarching showrunners for the show. I think is a good plan to kind of keep the flavor of the movies, to kind of prevent some of the arguments that some people had about the Evil Dead reboot movie, and even to some degree Army of Darkness, which I think as longtime fans of the show, or I'm sorry, the movies, will see with the show, was pretty much jettisoned. There pretty much was no mention of Army of Darkness. And I think of course, there were some copyright and legal reasons for that. But essentially, even that aspect of the Ash mythos has been truncated off, which is a little funny because of the cliffhanger of Evil Dead 2. If there was no Army of Darkness, then what exactly happened with Ash? But maybe we'll get into those particular issues in season 2. I'm also hoping in season 2 they get a little bit more footing for Santiago and De Lorenzo as Pablo and Kelly. They were for quite a bit of the show kind of the Too Stupid to Live sidekicks. They improved slightly by the end of the show, and again, looking forward to season 2, where it does pretty much look like they're going to have to roust Ash to come up and save the world once again. I think will give them a chance to grow. Again, nothing embarrassingly bad for those two, but I'm hoping that they really do use them more effectively next year. But overall, very strong B+, maybe almost A- for this series. I really think that they really captured the tone and the flavor and the fun of the first movies, and I really think that we'll see a real great yeoman's effort next season. Hopefully, potentially, we'll get 13 episodes next season. The ratings on Ash vs. Evil Dead were decent for Starz, nothing out of the ballpark for that particular cable channel, but I think they know they have a loyal audience. I think word of mouth will do really well with this show, and I expect big things next year. Now, speaking of ratings, the absolute ratings champ this season, breakout ratings champ, coming really almost out of nowhere in some degree to really dominate the cable TV ratings for all shows except for the show we're going to talk about third, Walking Dead, was American Horror Story Hotel, which was surprising. This show, of course, has had fairly good success, and the ratings-wise, it's been well regarded. It's been awarded consistently, especially when Jessica Lange was the featured player on the show. But to be frank, my friends, American Horror Story Hotel blew the hinges off with the ratings. It was the third highest rated basic cable show for 2015. That's over many more established TV shows, and really, in terms of all cable broadcast scripted dramas, it ended 2015 only behind Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. This thing was a juggernaut, and again, as surprising as it is, and if you've heard my previous coverage talking about the projections for 2016, the one that came true very quickly was that Lady Gaga was awarded the Golden Globe for Best Lead Actress in a miniseries or anthology, whatever that bizarre little category that they threw in there a couple years ago. But I think it can't be denied that she was a big part of it. I think a lot of people did tune in to see if she was going to be a flaming car wreck, and she wasn't. And so I think this particular season of Hotel for American Horror Story was very strong. I think it does end up all-time right around the Asylum Season 2. I think the consensus of most people who follow the show, some even, well, more closely than I have, I will confess, Freak Show lost me as soon as they did that whole little Glee homage kind of stuff, and never quite got me back. I think I watched 4 episodes. I think I watched the premiere that year, one of the middle episodes, I think one of the last 1 or 2. I think I saw the last 2 episodes of Freak Show. Coven really petered out about episode 5, really floundered for the latter part of the show. I really thought that Asylum was, after Murder House, the best season of the show, and I think this was very close to Asylum. Asylum, the first 5 or 6 episodes of Asylum were some of the best scripted and directed and acted shows on basic cable that year. As good as Lange was the first season, she had won the Emmy, I think, by episode 3 of that year. Even Asylum was a little creaky about episode 8 or 9, but finished strong. Hotel, I thought, was probably the best start-to-finish season since then, but the reason why it doesn't quite get to Murder House status was the last episode. My gosh, my friends, everything that Hotel did right for 12 episodes, it got wrong for the last one. Namely, they made it mostly about the Ten Commandments killer, which was, I believe, the weakest aspect of the show the entire season. Just could not care less about the Ten Commandments killer. Thought it really didn't add much. It was by far, it went out of the realm of being an homage to Seven into the realm of being just completely derivative. It was really kind of a waste of the actual skill level for the actors involved. I'm sure, again, people's agents were happy, but the actual execution of that particular part of the story I thought was really poor. It only featured Gaga for the last 3 minutes of the episode, which was a complete head-scratcher because not only had she basically stolen the show and had been very solid and was really, I think, got a lot of camera time, and I think that's probably why they excluded her out at the end, because I think some of the more veteran actors were a little cranky about her getting so much camera time. But of course, she won the Golden Globe the week before. The whole momentum for her to kind of have a great grand finale was there. Of course, they had her mysteriously, in terms of the plot elements of it, had her shot twice and nearly die in the episode 12, and then actually die in episode 12, so she ended up being a ghost, which to me was kind of superfluous. But yeah, they basically limited her on-screen time to the last 3 minutes, and then inexplicably, and quite, I think, against the tenor and tone of the show, they had what I will now dub the happy after all ending of Hotel, where basically after a season of mayhem and murder and duplicity and just horrific acts, everybody, no matter how rotten they were, basically got a happy ending. Now, you could argue that there were some characters who deserved a happy ending. Dennis O'Hare's character, who kind of was the sympathetic thrust character of the show this season, maybe deserved a happy ending, especially after kind of showing what a tormented soul he was. And again, they kind of approached that, but then at the last third of the episode, they give him pancreatic cancer, so he has to basically commit suicide so he can stay around as a ghost, which I could not figure out what exactly was his desire to do such a thing, even after his whole reconciliation with his son, who he didn't know. Anyway, didn't work. It struck a weird note. Kathy Bates' character kind of just continuing to shuffle around in the hotel after all the brutality and horrible things that happened to her, kind of staying on as a dead mother to a pack of ghosts, didn't make much sense. The strange return casting of Sarah Paulson's character from season 1, the psychic Bette Tatler, frankly, was a whole waste of time, if you ask me. Didn't seem to make much sense. The whole inclusion with the Ten Commandments killer was, I think, also kind of just like a little attack on Coda that didn't make any sense. Having her meet the serial killers at the very end of the story, with the serial killer gathering on the night before Halloween, and she's there, and then she, despite being portrayed both seasons as a complete attention whore, decides to not have her camera crew come down and film what would have been, at least in terms of her kind of schlock, chicanery type of TV, an absolute gold mine. And she just casually agrees, oh, no, I won't bring my camera crew. I'll just go down and talk with the Ten Commandments killer out of sight of the cameras. And I understand the cameramen couldn't see anybody. They couldn't hear anybody. But the whole idea that she's going to leave that off camera just to appease the request of the Ten Commandments killer didn't make any sense again, in my humble opinion. Even worse was, again, there was a real bizarre throwaway cameo by Gabourey Sidibe's Queenie character from Coven, and then they kill her off in 5 minutes, despite the establishment of her supposed inability to be killed long term, and of course her witch's blood makes Angela Bassett more powerful. And God love her, Angela Bassett. I'm such a fan for many years. Have loved so many things that she's been in. This really was one of the truly terrible acting jobs, her start to finish, in American Horror Story Hotel, that she's ever done. and I understand most of it was the script, her character was so weirdly underwritten, and then by the end of it, she was completely like channeling some bizarre cross section of Pam Grier from her set of movies in the 70s, and Flip Wilson. She really was just a poorly written, poorly conceived, poorly executed role. I'm really hurting for her because I was initially excited when she became involved with the anthology. I was thinking we were going to get some really memorable stuff with her, but outside of a few points in Coven, in Coven, yes, from when she first was introduced, it's been a train wreck for Angela Bassett. I really hope if she's back next season, they figure out something to do with her. She's way too talented to be wasted in this kind of poorly executed, bad imitation blaxploitation stuff. Not even good imitation blaxploitation. Pam Grier is writing her and saying, your folks need some script doctoring for your over-the-top 70s giant 4-foot hair weave, semi-curly afro thing. Bad, folks, just bad all the way around. So again, I know I'm completely crushing the last episode here because I think it unfortunately knocked it from like a very strong A season to about a B. It really was that poor. I will say that for the first time, American Horror Story completely botched the final episode of a season that was, for the most part, start to finish, very good. Usually American Horror Story starts at a very high point, high concept stuff, goes a couple episodes, dips down into the cellar for about 3 episodes, and then by episode 12 and 13, they've kind of gotten back up the hill again. This guy started up in the stratosphere. We discussed that a little bit in the 2015 wrap-up show. I think probably took more risks. Some of them I think maybe not even, perhaps even needed. I think the episode 1, the pilot for this one, the premiere of this season, was as edgy as anything that's ever gotten on basic cable. I think it was certainly as bloody-minded as anything Game of Thrones has done, of course, on premium cable. I was really shocked, even with a network that ran The Shield and ran Sons of Anarchy, that they were able to get some of that stuff through the censors and the Standards and Practices Board. Like I mentioned before, Standards and Practices was probably told, take the whole season off for this and just be prepared to answer a lot of emails, which, of course, I'm sure they did. Again, I think it started about as edgy and as far as it could go, but the show had if anything that Fulchuk and Murphy can do, they can make a show look beautiful. They are not, I think, such great execution guys. I think they always kind of fall into some of the kind of cliche, campy stuff, and I know that that's kind of maybe a pointed criticism about Fulchuk and Murphy. I know they've tried to shake that in the post-Glee time. I think that in connection with that, Scream Queens suffered from that this year. Scream Queens, I must admit, I didn't make past episode 6 because it was, I think, so self-awarely campy, trying too hard to be campy, trying too hard to be over the top. I hope next year that they understand less is more. They really have better concepts, and they don't really need to go too far into some of the kind of over-the-top B-movie kind of thing. I think that the fans are going to have stuck with this show. They made it a huge success, as I mentioned, this season. 3rd highest rated basic cable show in the country this year. It actually was, it rivaled some of the numbers that the ESPN got for Monday Night Football a couple weeks. I mean, this thing was a real juggernaut. Only Walking Dead did better on basic cable, in terms of all scripted cable dramas this year, it came in third. And so, you have to give some kudos to these guys for putting together something that is still keeping people tuning in, even after several very uneven seasons. I think, of course, Gaga was a home run for them overall, which was a real surprise. The news is that given kind of some of the light and heat that hit the show this year, even more so in her absence, that Jessica Lange is interested in returning in some method or fashion next season, in some role, certainly probably not as a featured player next year, but I think, again, that can do nothing but help the show. She really was, in all the seasons she was on, the best consistent aspect of the show. Even in Freak Show, which was certainly by far her worst role and worst performance, she was still, I think, probably the strength of the season. Having her back will do nothing but bring back, I think, some gravitas to this and challenge everyone. I think they still have not really found good niches for Angela Bassett, for Sarah Paulson, who is just begging to be the main player next time, whatever the concept may be. We've already hearing some balls hit around about what exactly the next concept will be. Let Sarah Paulson get some screen time, guys. Get her in there. I understand there's going to be a lot of pressure to want to put Gaga back in a featured role. But Sarah Paulson's been a good soldier for several seasons now. She has shown that she can, I think, deliver the kind of goods in this format. She was extremely good when she got the spotlight in Asylum. I think next year she should be the main character. Her and Dennis O'Hare, I think, have shown that they can be deliver some really great performances in this format. Along in terms of people who are potentially returning, Emma Roberts, of course, who played a very prominent role in Coven and has been, in and out in smaller parts in other seasons, is also slated to return. There's also talk that Leah Michele may show up. The kind of standard players that Falchuk and Murphy tend to want to work with. Scream Queens, I believe I've heard, is getting a season 2. Again, didn't do it for me. I was really hoping that there would be some kind of clever homage send-up stuff, but then that really descended into the whole kind of over-the-top glee-type kind of thing that they just fight it. They fight it every season. They fight kind of just getting over the top and getting too flamboyantly silly and too on the nose and just making it a jokey kind of thing. And again, I understand Scream Queens was supposed to be less serious than American Horror Story. But, you got to play it a little closer to the best, guys, in my opinion. But I think good things are ahead for American Horror Story. Certainly, it's here to stay, as it got into territory only seen by Walking Dead. And, of course, that's our next look forward for 2016. Walking Dead will be making its spring debut, I believe, next month. I might be wrong about that. Once again, let me not be the guy who never gets it right, as it's not so hard to get it right. But yeah, let's see, season 7 starts next month, and of course, as the discussion has been, characters like Negan and his group will be showing up to kind of join into the mix and the mayhem. Walking Dead, of course, is just soldiering along, though I would say it's suffering a little bit from some creative fatigue. The misdirection death of Glenn, I think, was a bit of a cheap trick, personally. I know that in the comics, Glenn has a specific fate. But again, all the characters have this kind of specific fate. In the comics, some of these things are not going to be followed in the show. Some will. But I think you can do the switch beta-roo kind of thing too often with your audience. I know Walking Dead is an institution practically at this point, but I still think that if they kind of play kind of fast and loose with the credibility of the show and just kind of say, oh, no, fooled you kind of thing, the audience is going to kind of turn on them a bit. But, again, it continues to be the biggest ratings genre juggernaut in basic cable history. It just racks up numbers near what the networks are doing. It sometimes even attacks the sacred cow, the sacred American television cow of the NFL. It's just ridiculously popular. And I know purists, and I'm one of them, tend to have some problems with the show. I find it to be sometimes in mid-seasons deadly dull. I have to really more binge watch the show than watch it week to week because to me some of the twist and turn stuff just doesn't ring true. But again, you can't argue with success on some level, and Walking Dead is by far the most successful horror genre show really in the history of television. And we'll see if they can continue to keep the spirit and thrust of the comic alive and kind of keep people's attention because it's really opened a lot of doors. We would not be seeing the willingness to have an Ash versus Evil Dead, to have the plethora of shows that are coming. Most of them, unfortunately, reboots or remakes or spin-offs or adaptations. We're not getting a lot of original horror, but we are getting some return product because Walking Dead is just so freaking successful. Now, on that point, we have just a plethora of horror-related show fodder that's coming for 2016. By some metric, we can include really almost 10 shows that are coming. First up, of course, is Fox's Lucifer, which is I won't say near and dear to my heart. I was not a special fan of the comic. I had looked at it, and it didn't grab me. But of course, if you're a person who's listened to this podcast regularly, you know my little encounter with Barbara Hershey and the funny connection that she made to Lucifer, not the show, but as I said in my wrap-up show for 2015, not actually the show Lucifer, but Lucifer. If you haven't had a chance to check that one out, I would encourage you to look at the wrap-up show for 2015 for 7-minute takes. But we have Fox's Lucifer. We have, speaking of Barbara Hershey, she is coming along with Scott Wilson on the TV adaptation of the Damien franchise. They are reviving that on actually coming next month as well. You have the upcoming reboot of Tales from the Crypt that will be overseen or showrun, at least by the early reports, by M. Night Shyamalan. You have, again, and I will include this in the genre lineup, you have the return of the X-Files next month. The long anticipated return of Scully. They got me doing it. Mulder and Scully to series television after some time away, about 10 years away, and one feature film. Chris Carter's X-Files is returning to series television for a 6-episode miniseries. Very curious about how this is going to be received. Those of us who remember the first X-Files phenomena can recall when it was, frankly, the best show on television. The first 5 seasons of the show, I dare say, were some of the best television on in the early and mid-90s. Everything up until, I believe, the first feature film was as good as it gets. It put Fox on the map. It took Fox from being the network that only was able to break through with comedies like The Simpsons and Married with Children, if you're old enough to remember when Al Bundy ruled the night. But it was their first great scripted drama. And to be frank, I don't think they've had another one that's been that close. I know some people would argue Fringe got very close to what the X-Files did, but I'm talking about in terms of interest in ratings. That's it, folks. Fox, the network, has never had a scripted drama that's been anywhere near as consistent a performer as the X-Files was, and that's going on 20 years ago. So I think this is a kind of a pivotal thing. I'm hoping that, at least in this limited fashion, the show will be warmly received again, and we'll get some quality stuff. Now, in fairness, even the X-Files fell from a very lofty perch. The last 3 seasons of that thing were unwatchable, if you ask me. It really did lose momentum terribly, and I think Chris Carter showed his limitations as a showrunner during those times because he just could not change the formula, or at least revive the formula enough to keep you interested. But I think in this limited segment, single story, small episode set, the reunion of course, Chris Carter with David Duchovny, and oh goodness, excuse me, the reunion of Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, I think will lead to some good stuff. At least I'm hoping it will. I think there's a lot of energy around this project. I think it's going to be the best of the reboots. I frankly don't have too high expectations for Damien. Tales from the Crypt, I am somewhat mildly believing could be interesting. But of course, M. Night Shyamalan is a pretty polarizing figure for genre fans. And as I mentioned at the top, just this evening was the confirmation that Fox is developing a new version of The Exorcist. Again, the William Peter Blatty screenplay scripted and novel originator, and of course directed by the Academy Award-winning William Friedkin. Just probably the most impactful horror movie of its subtype in American history. It really did invent a whole subtype of horror movies, which of course is the demonic possession subtype. There were other movies, of course, that dealt with the subject of demonic possession or Satanism, if you will. But, of course, The Exorcist set the standard. Every American movie of its type has borrowed something from The Exorcist. It's seminal. I'm frankly surprised they got anybody to really stick their neck out and say, I want to follow in those footsteps. Of course, Friedkin's version is iconic. Many horror heads have a lot of respect for the third movie, which I think is solid, not necessarily anything to write home about, but a lot of people really like that film. And anything you do on TV is just probably going to suffer in comparison unless they really can spin it some way that I just don't see. Again, we've seen so many demonic possession films, especially in the last 15 years or so, from the Position of Emily Rose to the Final Exorcism to so many that they're going to slip my mind. At least 10 or 12 in the last since the turn of the century. And it really is one of these tried and true, knock on wood things that they just use and throw out there. Deliver Us from Evil just a couple years ago. I mean, so many of these things. You think that Hollywood producers must have stock in pea soup with the way they keep making these movies. I'm not sure what they can do on a TV show that hasn't been done. I'll try to keep an open mind about it. Again, maybe they can get Max von Sydow to somehow show up for the thing. All he's doing is getting killed by Kylo Ren in Star Wars. So, we'll see. But again, I'll be shocked if there's any new ground done by, quite frankly, any of these shows other than maybe the X-Files. Onward to some other TV news. We would be loath to neglect the discussion about the Oscars, the hullabaloo that has arisen by the fact that for the second year in a row, no non-white actors, directors, screenwriters, or producers have been included in terms of the Academy's nominations, despite the fact that the discussion of widening the voting pool and the expansion of categories. Here we are in 2016 kind of revisiting a discussion that goes back at least to my high school years. I'm a man in my mid-40s. And again, we're kind of here again. And to be frank, I know some people are just flat sick of discussing it. People on both sides, or all sides of the equation, whether they be Caucasian or Black or Latino or Asian or many of the other groups that are arguing about representation in Hollywood. I know very well that many people's eyes just glaze over when this comes up, especially people who are longtime watchers of the Hollywood scene. And I will say, in some ways, I include myself in this. Again, I've been hearing this argument and discussion since the mid-'80s. And, of course, it has roots even a little earlier than that. And, again, it seems that we kind of always have the pastor's prologue in terms of how does one properly recognize and be inclusive of art in a society that has, not always been inclusive and diverse. And so rather than kind of rehash things about boycotts and where you stand with either Jada Pinkett's view or what you think about some of the comments by some of the folks who are kind of scratching their head about all the noise that black actors and professionals are making about it. Michael Caine waded in today with his comments. Of course, we've had calls for boycotts and calls for, the whole process to be changed. You actually have had, as of this weekend, the discussion that the Oscars are going to change the tenure process, meaning that if you haven't been an active member of the Academy voting on issues or been in a film or been nominated yourself for work, after 10 years you're going to be removed out of the process. And again, this was just pushed through, I think, Friday morning, that this is going to be the new system going forward. So the people who have had, kind of lifetime tenure, it is indeed an academy, just like the root word implies. It's like academia. You get tenure and you don't go anywhere. Supposedly they're going to put an end to this, and that if you're not active after 10 years, if you're not a person who is really looking at the films, if you won an Oscar back in 1968 or 1972 or even probably now 1992, you may not find yourself able to vote in the process. And again, I think that might have some positive effects, but this does not deal with the root problem. And so rather than kind of rehash the particulars, which all of us, again, depending on how long you've been paying attention to movies, have heard ad infinitum for years, rather than kind of try to talk past each other, I will propose a solution that I think is equitable for the way this system works, but also allows for people to really get included in the system. And the problem really is not with even who votes or who gets nominated or why they get nominated, but the problem is, quite frankly put, is that Hollywood system is by far not responsive to its audience. It's a system that is still, of course, top-heavy, still favoring those who have large amounts of access and money and interest. And let us be frank, even the black actors who are upset with their exclusion, people like Will Smith, people in past years like Octavia Butler or Viola Davis or any number of African-American actors, Idris Elba, a black actor from England, also has kind of fallen into this. The cast and directing crew and not the screenwriters, excuse me, but the cast and crew and the producers of Selma, all these folks, both American and outside of America, who have had the argument about inclusiveness and not being able to be included. Let's be frank, a lot of this comes from the fact that Academy Award nominations and wins adds dollar signs to your career. Let's not be fooled about this. Yes, there are true issues of representation and problems of inclusiveness and the inability for people to get recognized, but the reason why people are making a flack about this is that the person who wins an Academy Award in this cycle, one of the actors who wins Best Actor or Best Actress, will see financial incentive added to their bottom line the next time they go in for a negotiation. This is why people care about this. This is why people want to see it change. Because you see the Will Smiths or the Octavia Butlers or Viola Davis, and yes, Davis and Butler and these people have had recognition, but let us say a Michael Hall in this case, and Ryan Coogler, the director and actor of Creed, they want to get in on the game. Whoever is going to win an Academy Award for Best Director or Best Actor is going to see dollar signs lengthen into their career. They're going to have more opportunities open. They'll be able to put Academy Award-winning actor XYZ in front of their name when promos of movies happen. And so, of course, black actors, Latino actors, Asian actors of all backgrounds and nationalities want in on this. It's not mysterious. And again, the comments of Charlotte Ramping talking about how that she feels that the Academy is somehow going to be discriminatory against whites because other people want to get in on the game. Listen, she understands very well that this means that if she wins, that especially someone like her who's been a character performer for most of her career, she knows that if she wins, there's more financial incentive in it for her. So once we have that on the table, what is it that we can do, or what can the industry do to kind of level this playing field? Well, simply put, the system has to get a lot more responsive to the audience. Audiences have to be more discerning about how their film dollars are being consumed. If you're consuming these products, you have to really start looking to consume products that are much more representative of what you want to see. It's wonderful that films like Star Wars: The Force Awakens decided to kind of do a kind of open, wide casting for characters. But simply put, the fact that some characters and some actors get before the camera and have an opportunity to get exposure is only the tip of the iceberg. There needs to be more open inclusiveness for directors, for screenwriters, for producers, for camera people, for sound gaffs, for script line givers, for every aspect of movie making. And so how do we do this? How do we just not keep having this endless conversation about knock on the door, I want you to let me in, but if I kind of let you in, is this pandering? Is it really kind of just inclusiveness, or is it tokenism? What needs to happen is there needs to be more filmmakers who get more access. That means that more money has to flow to filmmakers who are making more diverse, inclusive, representative, targeted, whatever the term you want to use, movies. And that means audience members have to start being more discerning about who they support, why they support them, and where their money goes. Secondly, the industries that are part of the filmmaking process have to get more money down to the grassroots level. They have to be looking for more directors who are not kind of delivering the same old product, who are more interested in delivering something that's not what necessarily has come before. Thirdly, that until there are thriving, interconnected movie industries that break across some of the traditional distribution aspects, the way films have been marketed and promoted in this country are finally becoming responsive to the way other market forces have done. But, traditionally it hasn't been that way. It's been traditionally the American box office, the European box office, the European one. China is China's. Now, that's all changing, of course, and it's changing more rapidly than just even what's going on in terms of large studio filmmaking. Streaming, viewer on demand, a lot of the things that we even discuss here are becoming more and more part of the equation. But until the model breaks down, where it's basically, I have to make a film that I think is going to be able to play in Des Moines, Iowa, and Los Angeles, and Jacksonville, Florida, to return to that wonderful location, and and in Paris and in London. I've got to make this as kind of in the box as I can, because I'm trying to appeal to an audience that I believe is out there. I believe is what people will buy tickets for. We just simply need to have a system that's more wide open, where more films are made, more films get to theaters or to Netflix or to viewer by demand services, or however you consume your movies. We need more movies coming into the pipeline, not necessarily cramming different actors into big blockbuster films to play the same roles. No, we need more roles, more movies, more creators, more diffusion of the money to different talent, more discernment by the audience, more people finding filmmakers to support, finding projects to support, and giving your dollars and supporting those projects and building those particular brands and individuals. The other stuff's not going to work. Complaining about the Academy is too white is never going to get the kind of response that people, I think, are looking for. Saying that the nominees are not diverse enough is true, but it's never going to change by asking people to change the voting rules. What it really means is that film has to get a lot more diverse in terms of how we partake and consume of it. The whole front of the camera thing is fine, but until there are more directors of color, more women of color, more screenwriters of color, more women screenwriters, more movies being made, more product being brought to the fore, more inclusive pool of talent and contribution, and frankly, more people who are part of the financial aspect of the filmmaking business. This will never change. We'll be having this argument. Those of you who are younger people than myself will be getting to my age and still hearing this issue. Regardless of your background, you're still going to hear the same arguments, regardless of how much you either think it's right or wrong or don't want to hear about it anymore. It's going to come up again. We need to be smarter about how this is being approached. I really hope that in 10 years, we'll have a much more broader pool of film creatives to talk about, that the studios will not hold so much power, and that consumers will realize the real influence and ability they have to change this narrative. Hopefully, we won't be having this discussion 10 or 15 years from now. But as for 2016, we definitely are going to see this play out. The Oscars are going to be an interesting ride. I wouldn't want to be in Chris Rock's shoes this year, because obviously he's going to have to make some type of statement about this. Not going to pass without him having to make some kind of statement, and he can't laugh it off, and he won't be able to close the door on it, and he won't, I think, be able to make people feel completely comfortable with it. I hope he addresses it in the first 10 minutes of the show. Given just the way things usually work in my life, I probably won't see it live. But I hope he just puts it out there, gets it dealt with, and then on with the rest of this particular Academy Awards cycle. And again, hopefully, we're not here in the near future. Well, thanks again for dropping in on this, I think, more introspective edition of 7 Minute Takes. We really appreciate your support. We appreciate your support of Age of the Nerd. There's some really exciting things happening on the site. Keep up with us. Tweet us. Follow us on Facebook. Keep up with us on the comment section of this site. Comment here on this YouTube page. Again, we really want to know what you think and how we can continue to bring you the most important and pertinent information about all things pop culture. Stay tuned. A lot more coming from 7 Minute Takes, more reviews, more interviews, more updates, and keep coming to Age of the Nerd for all things pop culture. We really do appreciate your support. Once again, this is your host, Jason Stewart, and I'll see you on the flip side.